From his innovative scheme to his progressive leadership style to the signature sideline swagger he himself has, we're just different, and we're going to win. Now introduce Lane Kiffin, our head coach.
Thank you. All right. So, a couple of things as I was sitting there. First off, I appreciate the peace pole. It has wheels. So do you think I can take that to Oxford and Knoxville this year? Go in the stadium. I think that if I wheel that next to me as we come out the tunnel, that we're going to say, hey, good to see you, Coach. Welcome back.
I need to raise the mic a little bit so they can hear you. I don't know if we can.
Okay. All right. I was wondering why you guys didn't laugh very much. Second thing, the 1977 season that she said was a great season, and that LSU went to the Sun Bowl. So sometimes they've changed about what's a great season around here. You'd be a good AD right now. Okay, guys, so actually the last time I was in this room was the press conference, getting hired here. So just kind of sitting there, some things came back. It's been a crazy and wild 7 months. And we'll go to questions and answers at the end, but just kind of recap those 7 months a little bit from that day. You know, that day I sat up here and talked about that LSU was just different, and that what we were going to do, coming together with our staff and our style and what we bring and coming together at LSU, would be to sign elite, great high school players from around the country, and then also elite portal players from around the country. We've done that. This was whatever rankings mean, combined #1 class when they put those together. Obviously, a lot of work's got to be done outside of rankings when you get them, but the point of that is for that to happen already, to put us in a position to win this year with a really talented roster is awesome. But also, I want to encourage you, okay, if that can be done in that short a time once we were branded together with LSU, okay, what the future looks like when we have even more time to put together classes to know our own roster too. You know, as you get to, I know everyone wants to talk about year one, but as you get to year two, okay, you'll be able to develop a deeper roster because everyone says, well, here's the portal players that come, and everybody thinks they're one-year players. They're not. So a lot of times, portal players that pay off, okay, maybe even backups initially that are younger freshman, sophomore players, all right, then in year two end up being starters as these great players that we have that our seniors lead. It's actually a pretty young team. There's not many seniors on the team as you look at it. So as excited as we are for this year, I just want to talk about that, about the building of the future and to see it. And I was sitting there thinking there, I said that day, and obviously at that time we hadn't signed anybody yet. Okay, but then to spin 4 to 7 months as we're 1 week away from training camp and think about the roster and put that into perspective, it's been an amazing time in what we were able to do. You know, this is a team, as you guys know, coming off of a 7-6 year. When that happens, change happens, and change happens with your roster too. So I know initially there was a major concern because so many players were leaving and going into the portal and going out. Well, I remind you that as you put together a roster and you have change, okay, if things aren't working, you need to change. You don't just take the same pieces, okay, and, you know, sprinkle magic dust on it. That's not how it works, you know. So we were able to bring in a lot of players, and a big credit to LSU and to Baton Rouge for that. You know, yes, they want to come play for the systems that we have coaching, but when they came on visits, and these were players that in the portal that could go anywhere in the country, went to other great places on visits, one of the common things that was said by the kids, but especially by the parents, you know, on Sunday meetings, which is kind of our final meeting that I meet with them about how was the weekend, they said, wow, it was amazing going around the university, going around the town and feeling so welcome, whether it was at the hotel they stayed at, whether it was at the different restaurants that they went to, and that everybody knew who they were, and everybody was excited about the potential of them coming here, and they felt a really home feeling even though they're only on their visit for 48 hours. So I appreciate the help in putting that together because I think that people don't think about that. They just think players choose to come to a place because of the football program and its history and the coaches. A big part of that is how they feel in the community when they're here for those weekends or they come on games. And so that was awesome to experience that. And, you know, when I got up here and said those things about how we were going to put this together with all these great players, high school and portal, it's great to know that I didn't even know that part when I said it. I knew what we could do, and I knew the history of being able to recruit to LSU and the stadium and the great players that have played here. But then to add that on top of it, really, I understand why over the course of time as you look at it, it's been one of the most successful places in America, but also where great players have chose to come from not just the Southeast, but from all over the country because they feel that during the weekend. Our staff that we put together is really good. As most of you probably know, for the most part, the defensive staff we were able to keep. That was really important. Blake Baker has done a really good job here of moving the defense the right direction from where it was 3 years ago, as you guys remember. So that's continued to move, but also as you're able to keep somebody on the other side of the ball, it's really important because a number of those players probably would have went in the portal. It was a challenging time as we came here. That day we're up here in the press conference. Now we got to go sign the high school players that week and the portal players that month, and we're just getting here. We don't know the current players, so we're trying to learn them on the fly. Also, part of our staff's going back and forth and coaching in the playoffs. So Blake, in the stability as you look at the defense, a number of those players you'll recognize coming back from last year, that was really critical for us because to start all over on both sides is really challenging. So he's done a great job with these guys. The players love to play for him, and we have a really good defensive staff. Offensively, we were able to bring most of the coaches from our previous staff at the last place, and that's important to me because it worked. I got cameras back there, so Verge told me on the way up, remember there's cameras back there, okay? So we were able, if you look at that, that was a great offense and a great offensive run for a number of years. So to bring Charlie Weiss and a number of the assistants was really big for us in the transition of things. And also, when you have an offensive coordinator you're so comfortable with, it allows you to be more of the CEO of the program. And at all programs, that's important, but especially as you come here, because there's a lot of things like this that come with LSU that are important in the community, that are important in, especially nowadays, in fundraising, okay, for NIL. And so it allows me to do that, knowing, like, for instance, we just got off the field of a workout, that Charlie can handle the offense, as I come over here. So that was really critical to put that together. The other key is our general manager. College football has now turned into the NFL in a lot of ways because of the money and because of trying to figure out how you divide the roster as you look at high school and you look at portal, and also what players do you keep. People don't talk much about that. I'll say to you with the cameras, that's the world that we're living. With money comes other things. And so with money now makes it more like the NFL, and then decisions have to be made, and players basically are cut nowadays. They don't use that word, but that's really what happens around the country as you've come into this world where you have the portal. So basically every year has free agency. That is an issue too because you can't really lock players down very long. So every year they have an option to leave, which no major sports work like that. They have long-term contracts so that you can build for the long term and know what you have coming back as opposed to the current system now. But Billy does a great job of managing throughout the building and all the things that come with it, especially contracts with players, and then also all the player issues and building issues that come up through the year. Billy's been very important in our transition in that too. Because really now, like I said, it's more of an NFL, so if you think about it, you used to just have coaches that just coach football. Now we have personnel people that also are throughout the year watching other players, high school and college players, to build basically like a draft board and a free agent board. So if you just try to coach the old school way, you'll get left behind in that. You'll see some programs, maybe they coach really well, but then their roster management and then the players that they choose in the portal, okay, they miss on a lot. A big part, just like if you follow NFL, is the draft and free agency. It's not just the marquee names that you see, okay, in the portal. It's how do you hit on the other parts of the portal, meaning after the first tier, and that's your evaluation system, not just when you watch the film, okay, but who are they? When they come in, most places recruit the kids as they come on their visits. we evaluate the kids as they come on their visits to figure out who they are. Are they going to fit in our systems? Are they going to work? You know, we have a very highly demanding program, and we ask a lot of the players of how much they work, because like we say to them, like, you're in the NFL now. It's professional now. We're going to ask a lot of you. You're paid a lot of money to do it. You know, the old days really just being the student athlete, you know, and you just come over here and put in your hours, you know, those are gone once you wanted to make that type of money. So we have to figure them out so that we're bringing the right players in, and he does a great job with his department in that. We go to work, or they come back completely next week. They'll have this weekend off, and we'll start training camp. That's really exciting because we have to build a really competitive environment. I believe that the best way to run your programs, your business, is you create a competitive environment where they understand nobody just gets anything. And so whether they're returning players, whether they're five-star players, whether they make this much money, none of that has anything to do with how much they're going to play. That's going to be earned on the field. It's going to be earned through competition, and it's going to be earned every day in practice. And I believe when you build a program like that, they understand that, and it brings the level up of everybody around. So that's my favorite part, really. You know, the off season has a lot of parts to it and stuff, but the favorite part is really to get to the grass with the players, get them better, and figure it out. I think what we do really well is we get the pieces, and then we figure out the system to fit the pieces. Many people just run their offense or defense, and they just, okay, this is what we run. What we do is, especially offensively, okay, is we look at the players, we figure out through camp what do they do really well, and then we maneuver the system around that. And over time, as you look at the different stops of where we've been offensively, we look very different sometimes from year to year. We may have a year where we're calling plays at Alabama and Derrick Henry leads the SEC in rushing, you know, and rushing attempts in the country. We may have other years where we throw the ball a ton. That's all based off of the players as we figure them out. So it's exciting to get to that part of it. Schedule is extremely competitive, probably as competitive as ever, you know, with the 9th SEC game added. I always tell our players, with everything, there's a cost and there's a benefit that comes with everything. Well, that's great. It's more exciting games, okay, but that's more opportunities that you got to play really well. You know, one thing that I always say is everybody kind of has, I call it blackout game, where like you're going to play extremely well, every call goes your way, you're basically like everything went well. Then you're going to have a bad blackout game the other way. And so can you survive your blackout game is a big key to your success in your season. Well, when you have higher quality opponents, okay, it's harder to survive those games where you get some bad calls or the team just doesn't play really well. So especially with Clemson being the opener, this is as competitive as it gets schedule-wise. So, you know, that's why it's really critical that we develop the depth in our team, not just the frontline guys, okay, so that we can play well week to week and rotate guys, because it's extremely physical schedule, okay, especially if you include the postseason, okay, that's longer than ever, so that you need to be in the best position to win, to get to the postseason, and when you get there, to be in the healthiest shape to make a run in it. So I appreciate you guys coming out today. Didn't really know what I was walking into, didn't know it was this big. Didn't know I was going to get a peace pole. And didn't know that all we had to do was go to the Sun Bowl for a great year. So it's been a very peaceful day. All right, questions with that?
How's Sam doing?
The question is about Sam, quarterback. Sam's doing great. He's coming back from a foot injury. He's full strength. Now it's just about getting the timing down with everybody. And anytime you bring a new quarterback in, but really the world we're in now, and especially in the rebuilding the offense, all the quarterbacks are new. And almost all the receivers are new. So that's a lot of work to do. And Sam missing spring, this has been very critical in the summer. And fall camp obviously will be really critical. But health-wise, he's in really good shape. And he's really been grinding in there to get back faster than they even had him on track for.
Coach, you talk about the brutal schedule and rotating your players. Do you think they'll ever expand the rosters?
Well, they cut the rosters, actually, so that really didn't help. They brought the number down on rosters and kind of eliminated basically the walk-on numbers that were there. So that actually, as coaches, we complain about because it was very poor timing, especially as the schedule gets more competitive. But it is what it is. And I understand. It's a decision I disagreed with as a coach, but there's money involved. There's TV contracts involved, so the commissioner, made their decision to do that. I've said many times I think that shouldn't have been done until the system was fixed for strength of schedule and who gets in before you make our schedules harder. Because to me, we already had, the top 12 hardest schedules in the country. When they're still the top 12 and they go up, you don't get more points for that. So it really, in my opinion, wasn't as beneficial in the other areas at the time. But it is what it is. It's same for everybody in the SEC. So you just got to manage through it and do your best in it. And really it becomes much more, as you see scores, it's been much more like the NFL. More one-score games because the rosters are more balanced now, too, because of the factor of the portal. They balance them out because now you have backups that maybe stayed at these premier programs in the SEC. Well, now they go and they start at a lesser program in the SEC, so it's balanced it out more and more like the NFL.
Coach, you've seen this program for several years from the outside, now you're on the inside. What's the difference in the culture that you see just since you've taken over with the players and what's happening?
Well, yeah, I've seen this program from the other side a number of times of coming in here. I think 5 times on the other sideline, and I said it that day in here. It was really unique, and that's kind of part of where I came. It was just different because the first day people kept calling me like, "Well, what's it like?" Was it everything's just different about it, about LSU, about Louisiana, but it was just different as an opposing team. You came in and just the feeling as you're on the bus and how you feel as the enemy here. It's pretty intense. TV cameras, so I just say it's a very intense environment as the opponent as you're driving in. But then, I remember being in warm-ups, and some of the iconic songs are playing, and then the sun sets, and it's just like, you just have this feeling like, where are we? And it's a true home field advantage. That's very intense with over 100,000 people, and the records over time show that. Look at the home and road records. If you put together all the years of playing in here, and you see the difference. That's not just because the team just happens to play better at home. That's because of the environment, and it's like no other. So to be part of that, obviously you're always in here going, wow, what would it be like to be on the other side? So that was pretty cool, in the decision to know you're on the other side, that you get to experience that. And Ogeron and I have talked about it before. Like there's a weight you feel in here as the opposing team, kind of like it gets heavier as the game gets closer and stays closer. It felt when we were here just a couple years ago, and we're ahead the whole game, and all of a sudden, oh, here they come, and it's just like you think you have the game won, and then another fourth down conversion, and then now we're going to overtime, and you just feel the weight of the whole stadium on you. Versus he talks about the weight, the other side of it lifting you up, being the head coach here and being on the other sideline. So it'll be pretty cool to experience.
Coach, you referenced parity with the rosters and things of that nature, and had been a lot of discussion about this to this point. Tell us a little bit about the special teams. That's probably going to be pretty pivotal in the games this year if you're one-score games, as you mentioned.
Yeah, like I said, it's really much more like the NFL because there's so much parity and the schedules being harder, which was one of our complaints as coaches. Like, you're going to make it harder with a 9th game, but there's no understanding. Like the NFL, you have teams go 10-6 and then go win the Super Bowl. So it's when you make that parity, the understanding that sometimes the records are going to change, and you have to understand who did you really play, where did you play them. As you look at that, because I know this wasn't your exact question, but you got me on this. There's a big deal. I don't care what sports you play, whatever. You could play golf or tennis or pickleball. You create your own team, okay, all right, and you got your partner, all right, and however good you are. If I give you 12 opponents and they're lesser opponents, okay, your record's going to be different than if I give you these other 12. But you're the same exact team. So you have to in order to pick the teams in the right order in the postseason, you're going to have to get to a point where you say, wow, as we look at the schedule, this 11-1 team played one hard team, lost, and beat 11 teams they were supposed to. And this other team's 9-3, but they played really hard teams in really hard places, okay, and beat some of them and lost 3 of them. And that team's better than the 11-1 team. I have an easy solution I've said for a long time, okay? We do all these things in the committees and everything. When it comes down to is that team better than that team, ask Vegas what's the spread on a neutral site. That's what they do. They're going to do it a lot better than putting a room of conference commissioners and some former players and saying which team's better. You know, so there you have it. The question was about special teams, actually. So, okay. Special teams very important, and especially, you know, the kickers in the games as you come down to close games. So we have very competitive kicking and punting competitions going on as we get to camp here. And we'll have an update after camp.
There's been a lot of discussion about shortage in the cornerback rooms that you've had, the injury to Andy. So, how do you feel about the cornerback room? In past years, if we had 2 good cornerbacks, we were in good shape. So, you know, we're obviously beyond that point now.
Yeah. The quality of the backup corners is more important now than it used to be too, because it's hard to play every snap now because of a lot of tempo, and tempo offenses has come back around. It's like anything. When a team has success at something, you're going to see more of it. And I think a big part, tempo actually had moved out of the conference a little bit. We were really kind of the last true tempo team in Tennessee, was really the last true tempo offenses left. And now with success that we had, now I think, I don't know exactly, I think you got 6 tempo head coaches or offensive coordinators hired. So when the tempo goes up, it's more plays, so it's more important than it used to be, you know, to have some backups so they don't play every snap. But we have a lot of guys to look at, you know, some younger guys. That's just the world that you're in now too. You're not going to be able to stockpile like you used to, where, man, here's the next first rounder, you know, coming off the bench. You know, that's a young guy. So, but it frustrates me, but then I realize everybody's in those same situations.
Coach, there's currently legislation proposed before Congress to take the Wild West out of the current situation in college football. The SEC and the Big Ten oppose that, and other major conferences are in favor of it. Can you tell us what the opposition is of our conference and the Big Ten?
Yeah, I don't know exactly which. Well, Wild West could mean a lot of things from how things have been done in this conference, so I'm not really sure which part you're talking about on that, as far as legislation with the 2 conferences. Which part exactly are you referring to?
For me, that's the reason I asked the question.
Okay. Well, you don't know, I don't know, and you don't know, so bad question, bad answer. Yeah, we try to really stay away from promises. We definitely stay away from promises of playing time. I'm not saying I'm better or worse than other people. I know people do it, and then they promise, you know, the guy's going to play as a freshman, all of that, and how many snaps. I just believe once you do that, how do you look at your team room the same? You know, I get up there and I preach competition, and I tell them it doesn't matter where you're from, how many stars you are, or what your salary is, okay? The best players are going to play based off of how you practice. So if I already made these side deals that people do, that this guy's playing, then how can I preach competition? Because it really isn't. Because some kid coming in's already promised time. So I really stay away from that, just because that's how we build the program. We tell them, hey, you're going to get a great opportunity. You're going to get a really good shot to play as a freshman, but you're going to have to earn it. And I think that weeds out a little bit, because the guy that wants the promise might look good in recruiting rankings and everything, but is the guy really highly competitive? I don't think so.
So happy you're here, so excited for the season, looking forward to it greatly. NIL was mentioned prominently in your remarks, and NIL is here, but I would say a majority of people in this room hate the whole concept. But we got to live with it. We know that. You know that. With the cameras rolling,
3 things I'd change. I'm not ready for that on air. But, you know what we've done wherever we've been at when things come along, whether that's the playing rules, okay, within offense, defense, special teams in game, whether that's NIL, whether that's roster reductions, whatever it is. What I've done is I've not sat around and complained about it. And I've just embraced and said, this is what it is. How do we best maximize the situation? And I believe that worked really well because when NIL started, a lot of people, administrators, okay, people way up at universities, it's going to go away. We don't need to do that. We don't need to do that. Donors, we don't need to do that. It'll go away. It's not going to stick. And I said at the time, that's fine. But if you believe it's going to go away and you operate that way, okay, you're going to have new coaches because you're going to have fired us because we will have fallen behind so far that we'll lose. Because at the end of the day, to take a professional sport, okay, and salary caps, and if one team, okay, was going to say, man, we're not going to really like spend it, we're going to stay way down here, okay, that team's not going to win very much. It's actually happened over time in baseball before when teams have done that, and they try to go, oh, we're going to have this really low roster. It usually doesn't work out. Now you hear the one time it works out, and they make a movie about it. But most of the time it doesn't work, okay? So anyway, that was part, as I said in here, of this decision as you looked at places and looked at things. And it's not just, everybody wants to look at NIL and think it's, okay, well, how much money does the player get from the school? Okay, no, it's part of its NIL opportunities. It's not just, do they have the donor base to raise the money? It's, do they have the NIL opportunities because the branding of the school? And as you look at, like I said at the press conference, like Nike, we have more. Nike's given more NIL contracts to our football players. I think it's 12. The next school's 8. Not next SEC school, next school, period. So look at the branding opportunities when you come to LSU in NIL. And I think that's been missed in there, that people just think it's just, well, how much money do you have from donors? No, the kids want to know, man, that's a unique place. I can make my brand better when I go there. It's actually interesting. I was sitting in the office last night and the TV was on. Since you bring up NIL, and I didn't even know this. You would think I should know this, okay? But LSU being at the front in Louisiana, the front of NIL, okay, and women's NIL. I didn't know this till I watched the special on gymnastics. It was on ESPN or SEC Network last night, and I was like, wow, that is such an awesome special about how they got ahead of it here with the women's sports and the branding, especially with basketball and gymnastics and what they did. But think about it, because they did, and in the special you see it as they're going through, and then they win the first SEC championship, and then more players come because they see the opportunities that the women are getting to be able to use their platform, and then they win a national championship. It came as better athletes continued to come. So it was pretty cool to watch that, to realize, which I probably should have known, that LSU was on the front of NIL when it comes to women's NIL before anybody else was, with the coach leading it, as you saw the special. It was really cool. It's really neat special if you haven't seen it.
Coach, are you using AI to predict some of your potential players in the future, or to analyze the performance of your players?
Yeah, we're in conversations about that. That probably sounds really strange to people. But that's another thing when you talk about, do you embrace it or do you go like, no, we're not doing that because we're, coaches and they didn't used to do that, like the old coaches never did that. Well, that passes you by. If you did that, you'd still be sitting in I formation huddling, which we did here for a while. So AI is a good example of that. We've been talking a lot about that. Jack Marucci downstairs is an amazing resource when it comes to that. We actually had a meeting about that yesterday because we have started talking about using that when it comes to evaluating players, which blows my mind that it's gotten that close to where we can do that and put a film into it and it can give an eval of the player. Now, I believe we'd still have many human elements in that eval, but it is a really amazing resource of what it's able to do. I mean, I didn't even know all it could do, and the other day our receiver coach, George McDonald, is like kind of my best buddy now. We work out in the mornings together, and George is losing weight, so he's feeling good about himself, right? And he's not going to like that this is on camera. And we were getting ready for a recruiting event, you know, and he's starting to like dress better, man. I'm like, George, man, you look sleek, man. You got a nice shirt on, you know? And he's like, yeah, I take a picture and I send it to AI and I ask how good I look. So he can do that. He really does. If you didn't know he can do that, he can be like, hey, does this go together, you know?
Between football's share of the 20 million and then the NIL deals, does every player on the team get some kind of money?
For the most part, yeah, but you know, there still is this thing called a scholarship. So I know it's like for them, it's like they don't even think of it as anything anymore. So you still get your scholarship before any of that money. So there are some times where, okay, we start with that, you know, and maybe it's a player, you know, under recruited, a player that like we think is going to develop. You know, he's not highly recruited. Maybe he's hit a growth spurt lately. Maybe he was playing another sport and just played 1 year of football. So there's sometimes you can get them, you know, and so they might be scholarship only. It just doesn't happen much anymore because the problem is this. You can find the guy and he's scholarship only, but you still got to talk him into going to a little lower program that's going to give him money. So these kids it's not really a tough situation. It's a great spot to be in because they really have the control because there's no collective bargaining agreement. There's really it's a great time the last couple of years and right now to be a player, you know, when it comes to it, because you can go into free agency every year. There's no real cap and there's not public contracts where everybody sees them. So, and it's not like you have just 32 teams in the NFL. You know, you got whatever it is, 128 Division I teams. And so, like you say, the kid you may think, well, that's a way better school, but hey, this school is going to pay me more money. And it may be a kid coming from a situation that money may not be that big of a difference to some of us, but to them, it's a chance to take care of somebody in their family that otherwise can't. So there's a lot that go into it.
We're at time.
I thought there was a bell.
There is.
Thanks, guys.